Most people today assume wood rots simply because nature always wins. Rain soaks it, insects invade it, fungi break it down, and time does the rest. But medieval Europe discovered something that breaks this rule entirely, something so effective that pieces of wood treated with it have survived nearly 1,000 years. A preservation method so powerful that later governments restricted its use, not because it harmed people, but because it consumed forests faster than they could regrow. This wasn't a magical recipe or a lost technology. It was a simple system created by people who lived with wood every single day, who depended on it for ships, homes, weapons, tools, and survival. In an age long before modern chemical preservatives or pressure-treated lumber, medieval builders somehow made timber that resisted weather, rot, insects, and even salt water. Archaeologists studying ancient buildings still find beams so dense with resin that they feel almost metallic when struck. What's astonishing is how much these early engineers understood without modern science. They mastered techniques that manipulated heat, resin flow, moisture balance, and microbial decay all through observation and patient craftsmanship. The core of their method was built on 2 steps that completely transformed the properties of wood. The first was controlled charring. Instead of burning wood to destroy it, craftspeople applied heat just enough to blacken the surface evenly. This thin charred layer did several things at once. It hardened the outer surface, making it slightly brittle, but far more resistant to weather. It opened the pores of the wood beneath, allowing it to absorb liquids more easily. And it drove out moisture, creating a dry, oxygen-poor environment that fungi struggle to survive in. To medieval eyes, the wood changed at this point. It became lighter, more resonant, and ready for the next stage. The second step was tar saturation, and this is where the transformation became dramatic. Pine tar created by slow-burning resinous pine in oxygen-poor pits was heated until it flowed like thick oil. Craftsmen sometimes spent entire days preparing tar, simmering it in kettles until the liquid turned deep black and glossy. When the freshly charred wood was warmed and ready, the hot tar was rubbed or brushed across the surface. Because charring had opened microscopic channels in the grain, the tar seeped deep into the wood instead of sitting on the surface. As it cooled, the resin inside solidified into a protective matrix that blocked oxygen, repelled insects, shed moisture, and created an environment where parasites, worms, and fungi simply couldn't live. This wasn't a niche craft. It became the foundation of medieval shipbuilding, bridge construction, fishing gear, and even church architecture. Viking longships, famous for their durability, relied on this method. Stave churches in Scandinavia, constructed almost entirely from wood still, stand today with walls treated in pine tar. Farmers used it on fence posts. Villagers used it on granaries and well frames. Anywhere moisture, time, or soil threatened structural integrity, this method was the solution. But success brought consequences. Making pine tar required enormous amounts of resin-rich pine trees that grew slowly and were not common everywhere. A single large tar pit could consume entire stands of forest. As trade expanded and naval fleets grew, kingdoms began noticing that their pine reserves were shrinking. They needed those trees for ship masts, weapons, and construction. So governments intervened. Some banned ordinary people from making tar unless they had permission. Others restricted the harvesting of high-resin pines. In a few regions, maintaining tar kilns without authorization became punishable because it threatened national resources. The technique wasn't halted because it failed, it was curbed because it was becoming dangerously successful. When industrial preservatives arrived in the 19th and 20th centuries, the old method became less common. Factories could treat wood on a massive scale, and products like creosote, copper-based preservatives, and synthetic sealants spread quickly. But these modern treatments came with downsides. Many degrade in direct sunlight, some leach chemicals into soil, and few last anywhere near as long as medieval tar-treated timber. In a strange twist of history, older methods often outperform newer ones in durability, sustainability, and resistance to environmental stress. The good news is that anyone can recreate this medieval method today with simple materials. It begins by choosing thoroughly dried wood because moisture trapped inside will interfere with both charring and tar penetration. The wood is then heated, usually with a propane torch or by rolling it slowly over hot coals until the surface carbonizes. A cloth is used to wipe away the loose soot, leaving a firm, even char layer. Next, natural pine tar is gently heated until thin enough to flow easily. Modern builders often place the tar container inside a pot of hot water for controlled heating. The warm tar is then brushed onto the charred wood, allowing heat to draw it deeper into the grain. Some people apply a second coat after the first cures overnight, which increases penetration and longevity. Once the tar cures, the wood becomes profoundly resistant to decay. Fence posts treated this way can last years longer than untreated lumber. Tool handles become more resilient in extreme seasons. Outdoor structures withstand rain, frost, and insects with surprising ease. And because pine tar is a natural substance with antibacterial and water-resistant properties, it performs without the environmental concerns associated with modern synthetic chemicals. But beyond the practical benefits, this technique teaches something deeper about medieval engineering. These craftsmen worked with natural materials, yet achieved results that challenge modern assumptions about what primitive technology could accomplish. They understood how heat alters cellular structures, how resins behave under temperature changes, and how microorganisms interact with oxygen and moisture even if they didn't use those scientific terms. Their approach was based on patience, observation, and an understanding that durability isn't a single action, it's a process. Revisiting their methods shows that ancient technology wasn't inferior. It was simply different, often more sustainable, and sometimes astonishingly effective. And if we keep studying and applying these forgotten skills, we not only preserve wood week, preserve the wisdom of people who learned to work with nature instead of against it. This knowledge deserves to be remembered, practiced, and passed on, one piece of charred and tarred wood at a time.